2, 3, 4, 5. Neil is not with us this evening. He's got business travel with his work. First thing on the agenda is the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to, oh, I'll make the motion to approve. All in favor? Okay. Next thing is the resolution recommending final adoption of the Town of Cape Carteret CAMA and comprehensive plan. Frank, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I'll just introduce the item for you all. I apologize that I'm not there in person. I would much rather be sitting there with you, but I need to stay away from folks for a few days. So as you all know, the Board of Commissioners adopted, after review by the Planning Board, they adopted the new land use CAMA and comprehensive land use plan back in March. Following that adoption, the plan was circulated to the Division of Coastal Management and also various federal and state agencies. Those agencies completed their review earlier this summer. They submitted several comments back. You have copies of 2 letters in your packets that outline the comments from the Division of Coastal Management and then from state and federal agencies. Almost all of the comments pertain to really clarifications of existing conditions and the background information included in the plan. There are no changes to any of the substantive policies or goals or objectives outlined by the town. There are, however, a few changes that I would say are maybe relatively significant. They don't change the substance of any of the policies included in the plan, but I want to point those out to you briefly. Some of those pertain to the comments from the U.S. Forest Service. You have a copy of that email in your packet, but essentially they were concerned that the plan may suggest that future development could occur on their parcels, whether that be as part of the town center concept or whether that be the bicycle trail in the future. And they had pretty strong feelings that we should show those properties as public lands and not suitable for development in the future. So there are a few changes in the plan that simply delineate those 2 parcels on Highway 58 as public open space in the future. I've also removed the reference to a potential shortcut in the bicycle path across the southern U.S. Forest Service parcel. And as you see, the map now shows the bicycle trail going all the way along Highway 58 up to Taylor and Ocean Road and then back around. And then the town center concept maps have also removed any interpretation someone could make that part of the town center would be built on Forest Service land. So that's probably the most significant set of changes that are included in the new update of the plan that came from the federal and state agencies. I don't think that they are terribly significant. However, that's probably in the eye of the beholder. I certainly want to have a good relationship with the Forest Service and accommodate their concerns. And I think we can do that in a way that will build a good relationship with them and not alter the town's plans in the future. The other change that I wanted to point out to you that is relatively significant is I have removed all of the specific references regarding the town center concept. I should say all of the references to specific parcels associated with the town center concept. The town center concept is still clearly communicated in the plan. Many of the same conceptual graphics are included in the updated version of the plan. However, in light of some of the discussions that I've had since I came on board in June, I thought it would be helpful to simply present it conceptually without reference to specific parcels. As I think you all know and appreciate, I think it's going to be important for the town to have a partnership, a cooperative relationship with the landowners in that area. And I think that the updated version of the plan puts us on a better footing to do that going forward. But the town center concept is still a key feature, key goal included in the plan. Certainly has a lot of great potential for the town going forward. It's just not as specific in the version that's presented for your consideration tonight. So those are the main changes that have come about. I know there's been some question about whether or not this actually has to go back to the planning board and the board of commissioners. And I think the statutes are a little bit confusing. Out of an abundance of caution, I wanted to bring this back for the planning board's review and hopefully concurrence with the plan. And then ultimately take it back to the board of commissioners on October 10th, hopefully for final adoption, being that the substantive policies are still the same as were approved back in the springtime. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I did prepare a resolution that basically just outlines the planning board's approval of the plan, should that be the case tonight. And I will present that to the board of commissioners on October the 10th. There are pretty stringent public notice requirements and public comment requirements. So we have scheduled this and advertised a public hearing for the October 10th Board of Commissioners meeting so that they can consider the plan and hopefully give it final adoption at that time. If for some reason that process gets derailed or delayed, we'll adjust accordingly. But I wanted to make you aware of that. Once the Board of Commissioners finally adopts the plan, it will still have to be certified and go through another public comment process with the Division of Coastal Management. My guess is that'll probably take another 2 to 3 months, and hopefully everything will be finalized by the end of this year. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm sorry, I saw her hand up first.
Frank, I'd like you to brief us, please, on your knowledge of the state of North Carolina's plans for Highway 24.
With regard to the so-called super street?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I don't know that there's anything that is different than what you all may have been briefed on in the past. My understanding is the town of Cape Carteret went on record opposing that. And actually this plan includes that policy as part of the plan. It included it in March, it includes it now in the version that you're looking at this evening. Nothing has really changed on that. It's really more of a plan in people's mind for the future. There's nothing formal or official about it. There's nothing imminent at this point.
Well, the thing, and forgive me, but I was not aware of it, and it could be my COVID brain fog from January, but it said the town disapproves of removing stoplights and things of that nature. Are y'all aware of those issues? No,
So
none of us are, Frank.
Yeah, so the town's CAM and comprehensive plan that was adopted preliminarily back in March and that you have in front of you tonight says that we are opposed to any of those ideas. There was a report that was completed, I think perhaps it was underway when I left for California about 4 years ago, involving the entire stretch of 24 from Swansboro to Morehead City, where they're talking about a potential, quote, super street design for that. And that came out of an effort with the Down East Regional Planning Organization. And there's some talk about that. I think the town of Cedar Point has endorsed that concept, which essentially would install a median, would install these large turnarounds that you may have seen on Highway 17 as you head into Wilmington through Hampstead. There's several locations where you can make a U-turn essentially in Highway 17. The super street concept involves some of those things, but Cape Carteret is opposed to that. That's certainly the position I will continue to present to DOT officials and others unless that changes for some reason. But I think it's got a long way to go. There's nothing imminent at this point, nothing that I expect to happen on that anytime soon.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure that we are aware of it because I was not until I just jumped into this in depth and read of the town's opposition, which I'm delighted to see. But medians and removing the stoplights, when I've heard several citizens say they want more stoplights, they want one at Yopon, they want one different places to be able to get on the highway. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I will say that I've seen a preliminary concept plan for that, and I think it really needs a lot of work. I think it's probably pretty detrimental to the town of Cape Carteret. And as I said, the town's official position is we're opposed to that. Now, in the future, there may be some opportunity to take the best elements of that and incorporate them in some way. And certainly we'll go through a very public process if and when that becomes an issue. But I don't see that on the horizon anytime soon for us.
Well, good. Thank you, sir.
Mike, did you have something?
Yeah, just a couple comments. I find it interesting on the land up there, the federal land. 6 or 7 years ago, we met with them and they were very much in favor, Frank, of putting a trail through. Now, it wouldn't have been asphalt. It would have been like a pine straw. And we, in fact, laid it out and had the people down here to look at where we had it laid out. So I guess people change and ideas change on things. So that's somewhat a disappointment. The whole idea of going through that was to shorten the path, which going all the way to the point of the triangle wouldn't serve any really useful purpose except spending more money. So anyway, I accept what it is and we'll move on.
And if you're.
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly that's a good goal for the town to have. It was just a very strong objection that was communicated by the Forest Service. And I think we'll continue to look for creative ways to complete the path in the most economical manner. But at this point in time, I think it's best to remove that reference altogether and just move forward. But certainly we'll keep looking for other approaches that make sense up there.
And I had just a couple other brief comments on the comprehensive plan. Read through this actually a couple times, and in the end result, I was quite pleased with it. It addresses environmental impact very well, stormwater runoff. It talks about increasing density. And this is something that's been strong with me. I don't think we need to have any substantial increases in density without a packaged sewer plant that would handle that from an environmental standpoint. They talked about roads within the triangle and they talked about the town center. Now, unfortunately, the pictorial of the town center, it was fine with me. I didn't expect it to ever look like that, but it was the idea that you could do something like that. I think that, and it also addresses the fact that the internal part of the triangle someday have to have a increased package sewer plant so that we don't dot that whole area up there with septic fields. But other than that, I think the big challenge, not only for this board, but also the Board of the Commissioners, is use this as a tool in guiding us going forward and stick with it. And we will have a really nice town if we do that. That's all.
Thank you. Further to the issue of the trail, I have approached the owners of the little triangle. Well, it's over an acre. It's well over an acre lot at the point of Taylor Notion Road and Highway 58. Several years ago, the town was on the verge, I thought, of buying that property. And I think they should have, because it would make a wonderful trailhead to have that acre of property so that people could go there in their cars, in their bikes or their golf carts and park, and maybe have a bathroom. At one point, there was a septic permit issued to that, which would be perfectly fine and suitable for a bathroom. And certainly water is available through West Carteret Water and Electricity. But how people are going to get to the trail worries me, because they have to cross, bless your heart, one of those 3 roads and take their lives in their hands. But if they had a trailhead, they wouldn't have to park in Lowe's parking lot or somebody else's parking lot and take up space in order to use the trail. That would be designed for them. Now, before I pursue this any further, I'd like for the planning board and the board of commissioners to indicate to me if it's worth pursuing, because all the heirs of the three men who built the golf course own that property in undivided interests. And I don't want to chase 18 people down to get signatures and agreements on price and terms and so forth, unless the town is serious. So if you would please consider broaching that subject to this board and to the town board, I'll be happy to try to get that for the town. And I think it would be a huge benefit for the trail to have that property. Thanks. One other thing.
But before you leave that.
Yes, sir.
What, can you tell us exactly where that
Of course.
property is? Is it this green area?
No, it's this acre right here,
Okay.
right there.
On the trial.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
That was addressed by a previous board
Yes, it
and
was.
they declined to
That's
go
right.
that route. But that was also at the time that we had agreement with the federal authorities to put the trail through that piece there. So
Right.
just a little history.
And the trail could be shortened by cutting through the base of that property and not taking it all the way to the intersection, which I think would be dangerous and short-sighted.
Yeah, I personally am very intrigued by that idea, and that's something that I have been and will continue to pursue going forward. At this point, I don't know what the individual preferences of commissioners may be, but I think it's certainly worth considering, particularly with the Forest Service position.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to put it out there and make everybody aware of it. The other thing is that there's no mention of the private airstrip at Star Hill in the transportation system. It mentions Beaufort and just doesn't mention Star Hill at all. And it is being operated as a private airstrip at this time that perhaps needs to be included in there. I pointed out to the chairman just now and asked if it's a mistake on the future land use if one of the properties on Highway 24, now zoned commercial, was accidentally shown as single-family residential on the map of the future land use on page 123. And
Is that, can you tell me which parcel specifically? I think I might know which one you're talking about.
well,
but is
it's between Bayshore Drive and Lejeune Drive on Highway 24. And on my map, at least, it's shown in yellow, single-family residential. Right now, it's zoned commercial.
Yeah, that's you're absolutely correct in your observation. I can only assume that was an error unless you all have more background than I do, but I don't think the intent was to change that to residential. So we can make that correction if everyone's comfortable with that.
Thank you.
Good catch.
Well, my eyes are bloodshot from going over this thing, but even though we have had it before us, I can't always retain and take in every single item without reading it over and over and over. Like Mike says, it's difficult. The last thing is, I doubt that there will be allowed a Main Street project, Sherwood Avenue extension, allowed by the Department of Transportation. But I would like you to investigate that further. This is on page 90.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's certainly more challenging to do something at Sherwood Avenue than perhaps at VFW Road.
It's so close to the intersection. I just don't think they would allow it, but it's listed as priority 6. So
And you're on, I'm sorry, what page?
page
Paxton?
90, 90.
90. Okay, I see where it says Main Street Project, Sherwood Avenue Extension. Yeah, I
Yes.
think really I would personally like to remove any specific references to where the roads would go as part of the plan, because I think it's going to be fluid. It's going to require partnership and cooperation with really the landowners, the DOT, perhaps even with Cedar Point, depending on how it goes. So I would recommend to you all that we just simply remove the reference to Sherwood Avenue. However, I think anything is on the table for that going forward. If it makes sense there, that's great. If there's another location that makes better sense, that's great too. We'll certainly be looking at any and all options.
Thank you for removing that. Thank you, yes.
Just one comment on that Sherwood Avenue extension was brought up years ago in a joint effort with Cedar Point to allow bike and pedestrian traffic between the Western Park, ball fields, and Cape Carteret, and was going to be linked into the trail. So that was what the intention was of that. But anything that slows down traffic in DOT's mind isn't good.
Yeah, I think in reality, as I said, I think as a community, we'll be looking at any possible new roadway connections between Highway 24 and Taylor and Ocean Road. So I think anything is still on the table going forward.
Sarah, you got anything? Bruce?
No, I don't.
Frank, you got anything else?
I do want to say, I think it's a very good plan. I think it's very sound. I think it's very thoughtful. I think it appears to be representative of the community's goals, at least as I've perceived them over the last few months. And I think it's a well-prepared plan. So I'm anxious to move forward and implement the plan going forward. It's one of the most important, if not the most important things that any community does. So congratulations to all of you who were involved in it. And hopefully we will make it a reality.
Well, I was on the initial steering committee before it came to the planning board, and I am aware of the amount of work that went into it and the amount of community input. A lot of effort went into finding out what individual community members wanted to see in town. It wasn't done in a vacuum. We got, so much more community input than the consultant ever expected to get. So I'm confident that what's in there is what the community wants. I think there's a lot of really good information in there. And I think it's a document I would like to see us revisit often, rather than just meeting the requirement, the statutory requirement, and then letting it, collect dust. There's really a lot of good information there that's worth revisiting. So that's my position on that. And, there are some little tidbits in there that were kind of buried to make sure that, like the super street, to make sure that we had things that would already prevent things we didn't want from happening. And I'm glad that that's going to stay in there. So if nobody has anything else, do we want to take a vote on this? Do we want to just all agree? Frank, how do you want to do this? I see that I have to sign the resolution. So
Yeah, if you all are so inclined, I would just suggest a motion to adopt the resolution recommending final adoption of Town of Cape Carteret CAMA and Comprehensive Plan.
Okay, so I'll make that motion to adopt this. Can I get a second?
Second.
And let me see a show of hands to adopt.
I'm going to abstain,
You're abstaining. Okay.
which
1,
counts
2,
as a
3.
positive.
Okay. So, Barbara, you got that? Do I need to sign this now, Barbara, or do you want me to just come back and sign it later once you get everything? Okay. So moving on to number 4 is the ordinance amending the UDO to adjust for the development standards in the R10 M zoning district. So let me tell you what I have on this. The only issue that I have in all of this, and I thought I would have to tear it apart all over again, right, was I didn't think it was necessary to require 3 parking spots on lot, right? So there's a requirement for on-lot parking, just like every residential lot currently has in town. The residential lots in town are 2. Currently, the requirement is 2.5, but that is to accommodate for a parking lot, which is what we don't want. And in fact, our UDO, rather our land use plan talks a little bit about that. So my recommendation would be to reduce that 3 spot per lot to 2, because I think 3 becomes
3 spot.
overburdensome.
3 units.
3 per unit on the lot.
Yeah, not lot. You said 3 per lot, 3 per unit
3.
on the lot.
Well,
Two.
Well, each unit would be a lot.
Okay.
Okay, because they're
Okay.
townhouses, so they each own, their own
Okay.
little,
I
they
thought
own the
you
ground
meant the whole
underneath.
parcel.
No. So in other words, if you have a townhouse, right, you own the ground under your townhouse, you own the ground you own your little backyard, you own your little front yard, and in there on your property, you would have parking for 2 spots, which is what we have in all our single families. And I don't think there's any need to go to 3. I just think that's a little too much, especially since, we want to give them a little more leeway, like reducing, the setbacks on the property itself.
So I need clarification.
Yeah.
So there was mention of a garage.
Yes.
Yes.
Does that count as one of the 2?
Well, if you have a 2-car garage, there's your 2 parking right there. You can, a lot of properties like this have a driveway that you could barely get 1 car into, but there's a 2-car garage, and that would suffice. Or you have a 1-car garage and enough space on the driveway, that would be the second, right? But they are on the lot itself.
So that was kind of the question I had. So when you say from 3 to 2, that would be the driveway parking lot and the garage parking lot?
So for 2 parking spaces would be two parking spaces designed as parking spaces
Outside
somewhere on that lot outside. Well, it could be in the garage.
per unit?
For you.
Yeah, but I guess the same question we have, are you counting the driveway into the garage and the garage?
Yes, the same
That's 2.
as our single family homes now could be, the garage. If you have a garage, that's it. There's your 2 spots.
Okay.
If you have a 2-car garage. If you don't have a 2-car garage, you have a 1-car garage, then your 2 spots are, you have to have at least a 20-foot driveway, right? Because a car is 20 feet long. So you'd have a 20-foot driveway and a 20-foot garage. There's your 2 spaces. That's how it's currently for our single family homes. And I don't see us having, tons of cars parked on the road in our residential neighborhood.
So if the requirement remained at 3, let's say you have a 1-car garage, then the driveway would need to account for 2 more.
Right, which means the setback would have to be 40 feet.
So your proposals, trying to economize use of the land itself, less for driveway.
I'm trying to not make it overburdensome. Remember that this is multifamily housing, right? So I want to keep I want to prevent parking lots, the need for a parking lot. And still make this doable.
Yeah,
I
one,
don't
one
see-
thing for,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, one thing for the group to consider is that the current ordinance for the R10M district requires 2.5 parking spaces per unit. And the assumption is that those would be in a common parking lot. At the last meeting, the planning board expressed a preference to not allow common parking lots and to require the parking spaces to be associated with each individual unit. And so we either had to pick 3 or 2 because we couldn't pick 2.5. And so the original version was written erring on the side of 3 parking spaces. 2 parking spaces is perfectly fine if that's the planning board's will. But the intent and the way the ordinance is written is that those 3 spaces or those 2 spaces, they could be both in the garage. There could be no garage and they'd both be in an individual driveway for each individual unit. There could be one in the driveway, one in the garage. Really, the main aspect of that provision is we don't allow common parking lots. They have to be in individual parking areas associated with that unit, whether it's a garage or a driveway or both.
I think we need the 3, some are gonna have a kid that turns 16 and they may have a car, have visitors, delivery people. I think 2 just, it just seems, especially if one is garage.
Well, then you have the next door neighbor who has no children, who's retired and has 1 car. I think 2's fine. I mean,
Minimum,
Well,
right? It's a
we're
minimum.
minimum,
not
yeah.
preventing,
Yeah.
yeah, this is a minimum.
Yeah.
We're not preventing parking on the streets, just like we do in our single family neighborhoods. When my kids started driving, we bought them such a beater, like there was no way I was gonna let that in the driveway and leak oil all over. That's out on the street.
You got a hand in the back.
It's not an apartment complex, they're townhouses. 4 units, maximum of 4 dwellings per structure.
Be a shared, like, I guess, parking for like every, I don't know what kind of plan
So-
you have.
So there is a strong desire to avoid parking lots because they're just not attractive.
Right.
That's why we, like across the street, there's efforts to camouflage them from the road. That is in accordance with our, the land use plan that we just recommended adoption, that's in there. So that's why we're trying to avoid any type of common parking. So it does become difficult for people. If you have a boat, it's difficult. If you have a camper, it's difficult. What are you gonna have to do? You gotta go to storage. That's just the way it is. Or parking in your buddy's yard.
Yeah.
But, I can't solve everybody's problem. Right? This is the best we can do.
But yeah, I think if it's a minimum, and
Yeah.
I think that's
Yes.
fine. 2 is perfect, and it reduces
Yeah.
the impermeable surface that
Yeah.
we're
Right.
trying to get after
Right.
as well.
What about the width of the streets and where it is parking in front of the house?
On the street.
On the street, that would be on the street.
Well, because
my grandson lived in Concord, you couldn't park on the street, it was so narrow, they parked on the sidewalk.
well, that's not good. We don't want anybody parking on the sidewalks here.
No,
I don't
we-
think
we don't
we
have
approve anything like that. So, yeah. But the minimum width of each unit is 22 feet. So, which is enough in front of each home to have a parking space, on the street, if somebody had a guest. But this is, like I said, these are minimums. And, the people who are developing this property, if they feel like the size of the home they're building and that the consumer, the people who would be buying these properties would need 3,
Exactly,
then that's what they'll build.
exactly. Exactly.
We're not saying you can't do anything smaller than, or anything larger than 2, just nothing small.
I'm having trouble figuring this out. We haven't even seen one layout that would show what something conceptually be, where we can move things around. I just feel like if the garage is one and just enough space in front of the garage for the second.
So if you go and look at the new Cherry Point housing, military housing, when you drive down their full width streets, you don't see any garages. You see the garages. So across the front of that house, and most of them are duplexes there. So when you look at the front, all you're seeing is house and little front porch and front yard. The front yard's about 25 feet. But if when you go down the alley in the back, that's where everybody's garage is, right? So people come down behind their house and pull into the garage in the back, and they all have 2-car garages. I mean, it's nice space.
Wow.
It's a great way to
Wow.
utilize space. So if anybody has to park, if you have a guest, your guest isn't going to go go to the back door, right? Your guest is going to go to the front door, and they'll park on the street where there's ample parking.
So here's what I'm struggling with. So if you said that and you had a 2-car garage, you have to have space to put something to get into the garage. They don't come right off to the street because you got a setback. Okay.
Yeah, there's usually, well, the way I've seen it, there's usually at least enough space to put another car in the driveway.
So
Another place you can go look at is if you go into Canonsgate, there's a lot of the lots in Canonsgate are very narrow. So they're building these narrow houses and they go up and they don't want to take up space with the garage in the front of the house. So if you go there, they have the same thing. A lot of the homes, especially on the front of Canonsgate, they have the same thing. They have the alley in the back and you drive down the alley and then you pull into your driveway.
I have to see what don't go out and look at this stuff, but I sure would like to see what you're talking about.
But I think one thing that the planning board may want to consider, whether you decide on 2 spaces or 3 spaces, these projects are likely to have an internal driveway system as well, in addition to the spaces allotted for each individual unit. So I think there's going to be some other area available for overflow parking in those unusual circumstances. Whether you pick 2 or 3, there's going to be some internal driveways associated with these kind of developments.
Well, the developer is going to figure this out. If he can't build something that he can sell, they're going to have to figure out how to do this.
That's right.
I'm just having trouble with we said 2 spaces. Now we say the garages, and if they have a 2-car garage and a place in front of them, I'm fine with that because that's 3 spaces.
Well, it's just the exact same way it is in single family. Our single family ordinance is 2 spaces.
Yeah.
2 parking spaces, and the garage is considered parking space. That's what it's there for.
If you need more, you build more,
Right.
but you can't have less than 2.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to tell you how developers look at this issue, the first subdivision I ever developed after Daddy died was Deer Creek. And in developing it, I didn't count on the zoning for anything. I did the covenants. And the covenants require a 2-car garage attached to every house. And that's what makes them look so big and beautiful. Garages are cheap to build. They're not heated, they're not air conditioned. And if you have more cars or boats or whatever, you put them in the driveway, you put them in the side yard. Just saying. people figure out the best thing for the consumer in order to sell something. And that's one of the nicest subdivisions in town.
So we're really talking is a minimum of 2, but it could be 3.
Sure, if they
chose
want it.
to do it.
Sure, I mean, if
They
the
want it.
developer feels like that's the population he's going after, or
Right.
if they're building 4-bedroom townhouses, well, then it makes sense because that's a mother, a father, and some kid that's eventually going to get a car, right? But if they're smaller townhomes, then, it's realistic to only have.
I think
two
some of these
bedrooms.
properties, these will be smaller now.
But you don't have to develop them.
Yeah, it's not our decision to make.
Actually, I know that.
I'm just saying.
Raising issues in front of the board here.
Yeah.
you see.
Yes, sir, and I appreciate that.
So the way I'm looking at it is 3, if a 3 was the requirement, that would sort of have a chilling effect on.
Yeah,
I mean, it constricts your options.
Yeah,
You have to do this, and you may not want to do it. 2, if it's 2 instead of 3, you can go to 3 if you want, but you have to have 2, not 3. I think it gives
I
more
understand,
flexibility.
I understand.
and probably makes the property more attractive from a development standpoint.
You look around and everybody's got stuff. Half the garages in here, you drive around town, you can't even get in them,
True.
okay? Because they've got so much stuff. People around here, we've got as many boat trailers in Cape Carter as we got cars.
That's true.
And but you know what? The good thing about this keeps density down. These are probably going to be smaller units, probably couples. And I think density, especially when you get to talking to the septic for density, this might be better. So I can support that. I just want to have the discussion, understand how this works, because one car in the garage and one in the thing doesn't leave room for any boats or trailers or anything like that.
well, you got to remember, there'll be an HOA on any of these types of properties, and most HOAs, like, for multifamily, require that you park trailers and boats someplace else. And there is a lot somewhere that is, off away from everything and pretty much camouflaged, where you can park your boat and trailer for a fee. So that's kind of how they
I'm good.
how they
I
deal with it.
understand.
People put boats on the grass or they build another driveway for them.
Well, it could be hard to build another driveway in these things because of the space limitations you're going to have. But, for the people who are going to have a boat, we don't want to live there,
I'm sorry, what?
For people who want to have boat and the other stuff, they're probably not going to be there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. For people who are looking for these types of properties are either first-time buyers or they're scaling back because they've raised their kids and they don't have all the junk I have collected.
You do on our
A
street.
boat and,
When we had a boat, we had it in the lot next door, which was all woods. We never had anything that wasn't in the restrictive covenants on our property.
yeah,
That was us.
yeah, and you
We've
just,
got, extra driveways and 2 houses across the street from me.
and it's up to the individual HOA to police their own community. So again, that's not up to us to do, so.
Unless it's the zoning, it's
Right,
dovetail.
yeah, yes, if it's a zoning issue, that's different.
And any smart HOA will try to get the town to enforce before they do
Well, I raised this question. I got 5 boats.
it.
And, we got to have a place for them. And I can keep them all in the lot without putting them on the separate people's
You're a perfect example of why people can't live in a townhouse.
That's right. And that's why, that's a perfect example of why, when I researched this town to come to, I went to Old Cape Carteret and said, I can have all these boats right here. And nobody's gonna complain.
So that's the only issue I had. Everything else I thought looked exactly what we had discussed. Did anybody else have any heartburn with those changes?
Are y'all not even entertaining detached or
No.
attached?
No, not right now. We're gonna go one at a time. We're doing one at a time. So right now we're just doing R10M. So just to recap, some of R10, what we've done with R10M, which is our existing multifamily, is we're reducing the required size of the lot from 5 acres to 2. We have no 5-acre lots that we would even be putting these on. So, you mean yours? So it made sense to reduce it to 2, especially since the areas that we're saying it's okay to do R10M. Was like Taylor Motion, Highway 24 and Highway
So
58.
areas 1 and 2 are not.
No, that's all.
I just want to be clear.
No. They are on the table for cluster, but we're not, and cluster is all detached.
Okay, but we're
no.
going to revisit that.
Yes, yeah.
I just want to be.
And they're basically single family homes is what they're going to be. They'll be single family detached. Yeah. So does anybody have any other issues? That's the only thing I thought needed to be changed. I like the way everything else looked. Did we change the setback for that? I thought that was one of the things that maybe I need to go back and look.
The setbacks that are currently in place for the R10M district would remain in place. And so the current setbacks in the R10M district are 40 feet in the front, 30 feet in the side, and 30 feet in the rear. And so those would not change. Also, the building height would stay the same at 40 feet.
Yeah. You think we need to keep that front setback 40 feet?
I know,
I mean, that was one of the things I brought up. I thought, reducing it to like 25 would.
yeah, it's hard to envision this if you don't see like a model or a drawing with a building on it, what it all looks like. And I had one question for Frank. Of all the owners of things in the attachment where you numbered the things that would be R10M, they all agreeable to a zoning change?
Well, so the planning board at the last meeting discussed 4 parcels, 2 of which are currently zoned R10M. And I view the changes as not being harmful to those property owners. The other 2 parcels, I've spoken with one of them on Taylor Notion Road, who is agreeable to the concept. I have not spoken to the other one on Highway 58. But that gives me an opportunity to underscore that the action that you all are considering tonight, and that if you recommended the Board of Commissioners would consider, is simply to amend the zoning district development standards. Any actual rezonings would have to go through a formal process with the planning board and with the Board of Commissioners. So you're simply adjusting, potentially adjusting the regulations, the standards for the R10M zoning district. The town is certainly not going to initiate any rezoning on those parcel owners. It would be up to them to initiate the rezoning, and then this board and the Board of Commissioners would review the merits of those requests at that time.
So that is something I would certainly not have any heartburn with, reducing those setbacks. For multifamily.
Well, it flies in the face of this I'm like, Mike, this idea, these homes at Cherry Point have what in my mind, I'm gonna call that an alley.
Mhm.
They're coming in from the alley, parking the cars in the back. The more you force the house from the front to the back, the less space you've got for this alley parking.
Well, I mean, that's for the developer to figure out, right? I mean, whether he wants to put it in the front or the back or, but with
I think-
it, if you have the parking in the back, then you can reduce your setback in the front. I mean,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like, it depends on which way the garage is facing, how you
Yeah.
would want the setback. Because
Yeah.
I've seen townhomes that are, pretty close to the road, and then there's a sidewalk, and then there's that street parking. And then like you were saying, the garage or the parking is in the back. So that would be a really small setback. Whereas if you flipped it, it would,
And I've seen garages that open on the side.
Mm.
I like that because if they leave their garage doors open and it's full of junk, you drive by, you don't see it.
so again, everything in there, that was the only two issues I had. As far as the setback, if we don't want to touch the setback,
I don't mind. I think it's good to have discussions on things.
I think 40 feet's a lot.
It is a lot.
for a
When
townhome.
you're talking about townhomes, these are people that don't want to mow.
Exactly.
Well,
Getting back to his question, if you have 40 feet, are you encroaching on that? Or do they actually need more in that alleyway in the back? That's, I haven't seen anything on paper that would make me
I don't know
be
what,
committed one
I
way
don't
or
know
the
what
other.
the setback has to do with, because we decide on the setbacks, right? We decide on the standard. The developer has to figure out how to make that happen. It may mean that on a particular lot, he can only get 16 units instead of 24 because of what we're requiring. He may, because he doesn't have the depth to do it, he doesn't want to do an alleyway in the back, and he's putting all the garages in the front. But that's for the developer to figure out. What we're trying to do is figure out, how do we make this for the town? Keep in mind that this is still
I'm listening to the planning board meeting.
What's this?
And make sure you're
I
muted.
don't know.
I understand, but what I'm saying is this is the first time we've addressed multifamily 22 years that I've been on this board. And it's not like single family where, you got this and that, you can pretty much figure out what needs to be. I'm just saying, changing the setback from 40 to 30 or 20 or whatever, I don't really want to, until I can put something in my paper where I can get it in my head how it would work. And then I just don't know if I could make a good decision on reducing from 40 to 30.
Well, did you go to,
No.
Randy one.
Randy one.
I did.
And did you see what I was
Yes,
talking about?
yes,
There's
yes.
enough space. They have side, I mean, well, then you don't buy it. But, I mean, all of those get sold. Well, there's going to be a buffer around these anyway to make them less visible from the street.
Correct.
So I
But
mean,
I'm
there's a
just saying
20-foot buffer.
Randy one's not a great example.
Well, some of those ones, some of the ones in there are beautiful. I mean, remember that this is multifamily housing. So, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, this is the first time we've addressed this in years and years. And my question is, where did these setbacks come from? Now, we know where the zoning came from. The zoning in 1974 was patterned after the covenants. That's why Old Cape Carteret, R20, and Star Hill, R30. Now, one would assume, Cape Carteret has 20,000 square foot home, lots, and Star Hill has 30,000. Wrong. The only difference in the zoning for those two are the setbacks, as evidenced in the covenants. So where did the multifamily setbacks come from?
Keep in mind that there's a 20-foot buffer. Then there's the setback on the lot for the house, right? And that buffer is common space. So you're 40 feet off the street anyway, right?
Well, one thing the group may want to keep in mind is that all of the town's zoning districts have setbacks that are at least 35 feet. So they're either 35 or 40 feet in our residential zones, and R10M is 40, as are a few others.
Yeah, so we would have to change it. If
Yeah,
you would have to change the side if we wanted.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
Frank,
you start.
aren't I correct that the buffer is not included in that setback? So the buffer's 20 feet, and then if the setback was 25, now you're 45 feet off the street anyway.
No, the buffer would be, theoretically, would be included within whatever setback you come up with. So that 20-foot buffer that's required, the way the ordinance is written right now, presumably would be within that 40-foot setback or 25-foot setback or 35-foot setback, whatever you'd like it to be. And likewise, it would be in the 30-foot side setback and also in the rear setback.
Oh, I don't understand that how that would happen, because the 35-foot setback would be property that belonged to the owner of that townhouse, where the buffer would be common area.
Well, I think it probably depends on how the developer subdivides the property. In many cases, the individual will own only the land under the structure, the individual unit. They certainly could draw it in a way to include a small little front yard or rear yard, but it really ultimately depends. I mean, the setback area would include the buffer, the 20-foot strip there. Now, the other 20 feet of that front setback, for example, if it stayed 40, the other 20 feet, that might be an internal driveway. That may be just a grassy area. It might be the septic area. It might be stormwater area. But the way the ordinance is written, the requirement is for a 20-foot wide landscape or natural vegetative buffer in that area. So that's going to be within your setbacks on all sides.
So give us some feedback about what I'm talking about. Are we just better off just leaving it at 40 feet and letting the developer figure out how to get the 20-foot buffer and how to get 2 parking spaces on that property? Is that a better option, is to just leave it the way it is?
Yeah, my recommendation to you would be to keep it at 40 feet. If you do want to adjust it, I would say 35 feet might be reasonable, but I don't think you want to deviate too much from the current front yard setbacks that we have for residential districts. I think we're going to have a more interesting discussion about front setbacks when we get to the mixed use district, triangle town center area. But for this particular application, I would recommend you keep it 40, maybe go to 35 if there's an interest in doing that.
And that would give, we leave that, we can always come back to this, revisit it. I'd like to, with all the discussion, you got my brain going on what this would look like. And I'd like to go down to the, say, Brandywine and some of these other places up on Cherry Point. I'd like to go and look at some of these things. And I'll get a better picture of what might work.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go with Frank's recommendation and just leave it at 40.
Okay.
And that gives us exactly what we've got our 40-foot buffer and, our 20-foot buffer and, 20 feet for a driveway, in the front of the house. So that's where I'm at. My only recommendation then is to change from the 3 to the 2.
We don't need a motion for that. I want an overview of this. This started with a 22 unit thing up on Star Hill and Pine Lake.
That's,
Wait, let me finish what I want to say. And we've kicked this around for what, 4 meetings now, 4 or 5 meetings? And we've ended up with the 2 existing R10Ms, modifying those and adding 2 other smaller parcels. That's all, and all of them are on main streets and not in the neighborhoods that the people object to.
except there is one property that is grandfathered in that is not within the triangle or not on a main, not, on the outside of the triangle. And that's the one on the end of Live Oak, which currently is R10M.
Oh, and there's the other one behind the clinic. The parcel behind the clinic.
Is that R10M?
No, but it could be,
Oh, yeah.
could be. Because it's 18 acres.
Behind the clinic.
Yeah, Country Club Point.
Yeah, just to be clear for everyone, if you recommend the adoption of this ordinance, and if the Board of Commissioners adopts the ordinance as it's written with the change from 3 parking spaces to 2, these standards would automatically apply to 2 existing parcels that are currently zoned R10M. One is the parcel at the end of Live Oak on Bogue Sound. The other is a parcel that's to the northeast of the intersection of Taylor and Ocean Road and Star Hill Drive. It's in the ETJ. So those 2 parcels would automatically have these standards applied if the owners wanted to develop them in this way. And then any other parcels would need to come back to the Planning Board and the Board of Commissioners to be rezoned. And based on your previous conversation, the only 2 that you all have identified that might be appropriate are a parcel on Highway 58 near Pettiford Creek and a parcel on Taylor and Ocean Road that's adjacent to the existing townhouses.
Yeah. Okay.
So 8 and 6. 8 and 6.
Right.
Yeah, there's a map in your packet. It's the same map that you looked at your last meeting. But it shows the 4 parcels theoretically where you believe this would be suitable. And they're identified as 3, 4, 6, and 8. 6 and 8 are already zoned R10M.
Right. I'm good with it.
Anybody have anything else?
That's right.
So Frank, do we have to make a motion first to change the 3 to the 2, or can we just make a motion and vote on it with the 2?
Yeah, I think an appropriate motion would be to recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt the ordinance amendment as presented with a change to reduce the 3 parking spaces to 2.
Okay, so I
Per
will
you.
make the motion for what Frank said. Sarah is seconding that motion. Can I see a show of hands? Mike, you're a nay?
I want to see this thing go forward. I think we've got 90% of it. I've just hung up on that 3 versus 2. I really am. So that I'm a nay for only that reason.
Barb, did you get it?
And let me say this, and I might choose 2 after I get a look at this thing. You know, I can't wrap. I look at the way people have stuff today and parking, and I think, I don't know. I hadn't thought of that before, and I wish I had been more prepared tonight. So,
I think the garage was throwing you off.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think you just gotta think about it. If they're gonna go with just 2, it's just gonna be a driveway.
I will tell you that in my experience, in my long life so far, is that if you have a 1-car garage, you have half the stuff that you have if you have a 2-car garage.
Yeah.
So that's.
I think you're right.
So it doesn't matter what, people will figure out how they're going to live based on what they have. Okay, so we're good. Can we move on to the next thing?
Yep.
Frank, you want to talk about the potential changes to the table of permitted uses? You you sent out the table.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me, what is the 5P? 5 people said that they wanted it to be permitted by use, and 1 said keep the special use.
Yes.
Do we want to dig through this
Yes.
individually?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's got the potential to get really complex really quickly. I tried to make it as efficient as possible. I certainly don't want to stymie any discussion from 1 or more planning board members. But as you've seen in the written materials, I tried to summarize for you every situation where either 5 or 6 planning board members agreed, whether it should be converted to a permitted use or whether it should be retained as a special use. And I listed all of those for you, both for each zoning district, both permitted and special uses. So if folks are generally in agreement with those, you may want to just try to develop some consensus that you all as a group are comfortable with those changes. Certainly any items that you're not comfortable with, please discuss and please make sure you feel comfortable with. I tried to focus the discussion to the areas where folks had some, I think, reasonable disagreements. So when you look at that worksheet, first of all, if you see an SUP marked in green, my recommendation to the group was to make that a permitted use. If you see an SUP marked in yellow, my recommendation was to keep it as a special use. If you see it marked in red, my recommendation was simply delete it from the table altogether. When you look at the numbers that are listed under each particular SUP, if it says 5P 1S, for example, that means 5 of the 6 of you said, I think it should become a permitted use. 1 of you said, no, I think it should stay a special use. In areas where you see a D, that means there were 1 or 2 of you that suggested maybe that we should just delete it altogether. So because this gets really complicated and confusing really quick, I tried to highlight all those where there was agreement. And then on the last page of the memorandum, I'm sorry, the second to the last page of the memorandum that I wrote to you, I listed all of the uses and all of the zoning districts where there was some disagreement. It wasn't 5-0, or wasn't 5-1, and it wasn't 6-0. And you'll see that there's a total of 7 different uses in different zones indicated there. So you may want to start with a discussion of those 7 and see how folks feel about those and try to get through that and then go back to the others. Or you can go through each line one by one. It really depends on your preference. I was trying to make it as easy as possible because it gets confusing pretty quickly, particularly when you think about the different zones. The other thing I wanted to just point out to the group is I would not have any discussion about the B30 zone right now. As you can see, there are a lot of special uses in that zone. There is only 1 parcel in the entire town that is zoned B30, and it's currently occupied by the Culligan facility on the far eastern edge of town on Highway 24. I don't think that's worth your time to discuss right now. So my recommendation to you would be to focus on those 7 on the second to last page, and then all of the others that are in there. But ultimately, it's up to you all.
Well, I mean, at some point, there may be properties that it makes sense to rezone to B30. If we want to not mess with that tonight, you know what I didn't understand, Frank? Why, if it's permitted in B20, why would we not permit it in B30? Like, in other words, if we permitted dry cleaning pickup in B20, why would we not permit it in B30 to have it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it depends on your perspective, right? On the one hand, you may say, well, B30 is for maybe more potentially disruptive type uses, so we would allow a less disruptive use there. Makes total sense. I think that's what you're saying with your comment. There are some communities that may look at it and say, well, we want to reserve certain spaces for the most disruptive, most impactful things, and we don't want to waste that space, so to speak, on something that might work well in B20 or maybe B10. So depends on your philosophy. And we can talk about all those. I just, in the interest of time, you may want to save that discussion for last.
Okay, so do you want to take us through those 7 and we'll,
What page are we-
Yeah, I'd be happy to. There are no page numbers on the memo, so I apologize for that. But on the second to last page of the memorandum, there's a header that says special uses warranting further discussion. And you'll see at the bottom is the bottom 1/3 of that page. So the first one where there was some disagreement is in the R10M zoning district. That's that multifamily district that we just talked about with the previous ordinance amendment. Whether we should allow community centers and halls in that district. One of you said we should make them permitted use. 2 of you said keep it a special use. 3 of you said delete it altogether. And I think everybody's opinion is certainly valid, but that was an area where you all probably ought to discuss that and decide what you think is appropriate in that particular area.
well, so if R10M, so let's just think if we took a large parcel, like an 18-acre parcel, and made it, you know, a lovely upscale condominium complex, we would have a community center in there, right? Like, doesn't that stand to reason that they would have a community center in a large?
But it would be private. I think this refers to public.
For like for public. I see.
Yeah, separate building, you know, sometimes they have, besides pools and things like that, a community center where,
So community center would not be the community, like the private community. Community center would be,
Like West
Like-
Carteret.
okay.
yeah, but that's a great question though.
Yeah.
Now, what is meant by that? That small, if it's an R10M, it would be a little like a building where the people could meet from that community. But a community center, if you go to big places,
Yeah.
might be something like a separate building in there where they have meetings and board,
Yeah.
companies come and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, and like Pax just said, like the community center over at Western Regional. Like,
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
great community center.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Why do we not want a community center?
Well,
It doesn't make sense for those 4.
Hmm.
I said it probably just doesn't make sense for those 4 using parcels that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, there's really only one parcel that would really even, you know, draw something like that. But okay, I don't see why we would want to not have community centers. You know, that, it seems to me that that's something we want in our community.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, this is the only place we have to meet.
Is it in other? But it would be allowed in other areas, just not, if we just deleted it in R10M, it would still be B10, B20, B30.
Yeah, theoretically, we would convert them to a permitted use by right in B10 and B20 and potentially B30.
Just not those 4 parcels.
So
No, it's not. It's in B10, 20, and 30, but it's not in the residential district.
Yeah, we're just talking about it in this one.
That's the only residential district it's located in is R10M. And when you think about those kind of things, you know, they might be more appropriate in a commercial type area than in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Again, we wouldn't stop a subdivision from having a pool or a clubhouse or anything like that. That's not this.
We're talking, and so could we add to this, to clarify, public community centers and halls? Could we add that to clarify it?
Well, I think the intent with this is public or private. It could be some sort of private venture. It could be a public one as well.
Well, what I'm trying to do is separate it from,
Okay, I'm sorry.
from the fact that, okay, Star Hill has a swimming pool. Aqua Center has a swimming pool. You know, but yes, they're open to the public, but they're privately owned. So
Yeah, so I think something like Star Hill, for example, would probably fall under that recreation private category that's further down the list. And in
Okay.
that case, nearly everyone recommended keeping those as a special use in all of the zoning districts. You see what I'm saying? And this is where, you know, ultimately it's going to come down to the interpretation of the UDO administrator. And if the person disagrees with the UDO administrator's interpretation, there's two options that someone could proceed with. One is they could appeal that to the Board of Adjustment. The second is they could request a text amendment or a zoning change to accommodate whatever they want to do. So I think really, I don't have particularly strong feelings about the substance of these. I'm more interested in creating a legislative deliberation as opposed to that quasi-judicial deliberation that goes with the special use permit process. So, you know, that's something I think important for you to keep in mind, is that there's always an avenue for someone to request a change if it doesn't quite fit. And then it's a legislative process. I think it's a more inclusive process personally.
well, we all said in answer to your questionnaire you sent around, all 6 of us said that recreation should be allowed in all zones, according to what
That
I'm
is-
looking.
Yeah, so we're talking about community centers and halls, which is on the very first page of the worksheet. And that's
Yeah.
really, I think, intended to be a larger type facility, could be public, could be private. I think what you're looking at, Paxton, is on the second to last page of the worksheet. We make a distinction between private and public recreation facilities. And you're correct. In the case of the public recreation facilities, every one of you said they should be a permitted use in every zone. In the case of the private recreation facilities, 5 of you said they should stay a special use in every zone. So it gets down to semantics a little bit, and ultimately the UDO administrator has to make a judgment about what the person's actually proposing. In my mind, a community hall, a community center and a community hall is something that's more akin to a large facility, a for-profit private facility. And in my mind, those would seemingly fit better in commercially zoned areas. For whatever reason, our ordinance allows it as a special use permit only in that one residential zone. And I don't know the history on that or why that is. I guess the other thing I would say to you all too is, if you're in doubt on any of these, the easy way out is just to leave it as it is, as a special use permit.
Well, the majority of the board recommended to delete it.
3
Right.
people did, yeah.
And so that's the majority. No.
Well, 3 people is half, and 2 people said keep it special. 1 person said make it permitted. So
Sorry. Where are we on the worksheet? I'm so sorry.
On the, right here.
Second page.
Okay, second page.
Community center.
Frank,
All right,
I got a question for you.
all right.
For years here, we never had an SUP process and everything seemed to go easy. And I am not in favor of the SOP process. However, where we end up having one, do you think that this board ever get a chance to review the SUP process. I'll give you an example. The two SUPs that we had since this came to life were both handled by the UDO administrator and in opposition to what the planning board thought about it. So,
We were not happy about it.
so what I'm saying, do you think, I've seen in other towns where the planning board is involved in the SUP process, but we were told not only could we not get involved, but we couldn't even speak with the commissioner about it.
Yeah, so that's the way the law is written, and I would like to change that. That's the quasi judicial process has significant restrictions on how and when different players can participate in that process. I'm trying to move us more toward clear language that makes it a legislative process, in which case you can talk to anybody you want, and the public can talk to anybody they want at any time about the issue. And I think it's a smoother, cleaner process. In the communities where the planning board gets involved in special use permits, that's usually a situation where the governing body has delegated that responsibility solely to the planning board. And in some communities, they delegate it solely to the Board of Adjustment. Some communities, they keep that authority for themselves. So it's really done in lots of different ways. But regardless of what body is the decision-making body, the quasi-judicial process is such that that's the only body that should be involved in that process. And so that's why it gets a little bit dicey when you have an advisory board commenting on a special use permit that's to be decided by a governing body, for example. So I hope that here's the practical result of the change that you may very well make. If you change a lot of these to a permitted use, or if you delete a lot of these and just say, look, we don't reference them or we don't allow them, if someone disagrees with that or wants to do something different, they're going to have to go through a legislative process. They're going to have to request that we amend our zoning map or we amend our zoning ordinance, and the planning board will be involved in that, and then the board of commissioners will be involved in that, and the public is certainly involved in that at every step of the way. So I think our goals are the same. It's just the mechanism that we use to get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on this. Like, for example, that was a great one, the community center. Is a big public one, or is a little thing, a little poolside thing?
Like at Cape Point.
Yeah. Is it something like that? Or take the one just below that, convenience stores, including gasoline sale. Well, I'm sure that was put in there just like the little one we got sitting right next to the town hall over here. 4 pumps and a little convenience store. But you can go over to Swansboro and see a 22 pump thing with a convenience store in there. And from 1970 to now, the world has changed. And I'm wondering if we don't have to really look at all these definitions here, and kind of be a little bit more definitive.
Yeah, so the reality is we don't have a definition of every single one of these uses. In fact, there's probably more that don't have a definition than do. And then ultimately, that's where the UDO administrator has to make that interpretation. And like I said, if the person doesn't agree with the interpretation, either favorably or unfavorably, they can appeal that to the Board of Adjustment.
Madam Chair, I have a question. That brings up a good question I had. What is a rental service store?
Yeah, so
Country Air over in Swansboro?
Well, if that's the definition, I understand that. But is that
Well,
what we're
that's
saying?
what
Or like furniture rental center.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. A rental service store. What are they renting? And why would we
Yeah.
want it in B10?
Yeah, so again, I think it ultimately is going to come down to the interpretation. You'll note that in other places in our table of permitted and special uses, we talk about farm equipment and heavier equipment and those kind of rental things. And ultimately, you have to make the best judgment that you can based on the language in the table of permitted and special uses. And I would submit to you that that's not a weakness in our ordinance. That's the case in any community. There's always a judgment that needs to be made by the person administering it. So,
And Madam Chair, and another question, pump houses. Now, are they referring to a pump house for a private well that either pre-existed West Carteret Water Corp or was dug primarily for irrigation? Is that what pump houses mean in this? Because they're
So,
allowed,
I'm sorry.
according to the discussion, we're to decide whether pump houses are going to be allowed in these zones. Well, what are we talking about? Fresh water well pump houses?
Yes. That's
Yeah.
where, in 1972, you had to put it in every district because that's all it was here.
Right, I understand, but that's, I was just questioning the definition is all.
Yeah, so I think from my interpretation, I think a pump house could be any of the things that you mentioned. It could be for the water system. It could be a pump house for a sewer system. It could be a pump house for an irrigation system. It could be anything like that.
I see. I mean, I have no objection to them being in all zoning districts. I just didn't know what kind we were referring to.
And I think
Can we stay on those 7 so we can get them out of the way?
Yeah.
Because they seem to have the most, the most issues. So what did we decide about community centers and halls? To delete it in R10M? That was that's what I think, was to delete it in R10M and just leave it in the others, in the commercial.
Yeah.
That's my read.
Anybody have any heartache with that? So I just want to get through. So we're on community centers, we're good
We're going
To-
to delete it.
to delete it.
All right.
Farm produce and craft markets in B10. What is the lot behind us? Is that B10 where we have our little craft things? It looks like it's B10.
Yes, it does. It's B10.
So the problem we have is where we're, if we vote to get rid of that, we're voting out our festivals. And frankly, I always find nice earrings at those festivals. So I don't particularly want to do away with that.
Yeah, so I think that's a reasonable question to ask. I think the intent is not to prohibit a special event like that, particularly a town-sponsored special event. So if you want to keep that as a permitted use, you certainly can do that, or keep it as a special use. But we would not interpret that to apply to a town-sponsored special event on town-owned property at a town park. This would be intended more for some other organization or some for-profit venture. And the reason, so it is allowed, based on the feedback from the group in the B20 district, it would become a permitted use in the B20 district.
So you're saying that a community event is exempt from zoning?
I think if we're having a town festival on a town park, we would not apply the zoning to that because it's such an infrequent thing. Currently, we do those 4 times a year for a few hours a day. I think this was intended for something that was more permanent or more fixed. So I would not expect a town festival to have to follow the zoning guidance.
Okay, so does anybody have any problem with deleting that? If it means that we could keep. So deleting like farmers markets in the B10 district, but it not having an impact on our festivals.
Well, why would we have a different rule for the town or?
Well, it doesn't seem like we
Didn't
should
seem
have a
fair.
different rule.
No.
Well, I'm
Right.
saying that it's, the test. is
'Cause it's
whether
infrequent.
permanent or temporary.
I see.
That was the test.
Yeah.
4 times a year versus 365.
Yeah, like this in Cedar Point, the 2 markets that are over there, that would be more.
Yeah. And then in B30, why do we not want to have farmers?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know why we wouldn't want to have a farmer's market in B30.
I
I mean, if they want to set up a farmer's market over there at Culligan,
I had a
I'd
lot
be
of
there.
the
Yeah,
leads. I'm sorry.
you may very well want to allow them in B30. My suggestion to you was to not even talk about the B30 tonight, but
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
no, I'm not suggesting that you don't allow them there. I'm just saying it probably is not the best use of your time to talk about B30 tonight.
But remember, there may be a request to rezone property B30.
Yeah, we're gonna have to hit it at some point.
Yeah,
Understood.
Yeah.
You're right. That could happen. It's such a complicated discussion as I think you're finding out. I was just trying to make a little bit of progress on the things that were maybe more likely to happen sooner, but there's no perfect way to do it.
either way.
So for farmers produce and craft markets, I am good with deleting from B10. Does anybody else have any heartburn with that?
No.
And Frank, I know we're not supposed to talk about B30, but right now it's a delete. It's in red. Do you want us to agree with that, or do you want to just?
I personally don't want to talk about B30 at all
Okay,
right
so-
now.
So we'll just ignore your little red spot. Okay. Funeral homes in B10. Let me go to that.
Yeah, so for funeral homes,
Oh, here they are.
in the B20 district, 5 of you suggested making that a permitted use outright. In the B10 district, it was 4 people who suggested making it a permitted use and 2 people who said to delete it. And it wasn't a 5-1 or 6-0 vote, so that's why I listed it for discussion here. You may want to make it a permitted use in the B10. There's only, as you all know, there's only a handful of properties that are zoned B10 anyway. But it's really, it's up to you. It's your decision.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, they're private, they're quiet businesses. So, I'm being serious,
I know.
and they're usually attractive,
Yeah.
from the outside, and they're not used a lot. They're used for a couple hours at a time. So I don't have any problem leaving that
Permitted.
in
Yeah.
B10,
I don't either.
permitted in B10 and B20, but I'm not going to talk about B30. All right.
So funeral home permitted in B10.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay,
yes. Now,
great.
on the next one, furniture manufacturing and woodworking in B20, that's already permitted. There was an addition to the zoning that was allowed when, oh gosh, Roy Fish rented a building on Manatee Street and worked wood in it. So why does this come up for deletion in B20?
But wasn't that, isn't that B20, that building? Isn't it the building next to yours? I thought
It
that was
is B20
now.
and it was allowed. So why is it up for deletion?
Oh, I see.
So it's listed as a special use permit in B20 on the top of page 3 of the table. I'm sorry, page 4.
I understand that, Frank, but there was a special addition to the zoning that allowed woodworking in B20 previously.
Maybe
So
that ought to be yellow.
or permitted. Yes, sir.
Either green or yellow.
It's permitted now.
Yeah, why, I want, for the people who disagree with permitted in B20 for furniture manufacturing and woodworking, somebody help me understand why you would have a problem with that?
I don't.
Why would you not want
Well, it comes down to the definition, Susan.
Yeah.
Because the definition, what that was over in B20 was an internal carpentry shop.
That's right.
And woodworking could be major stuff outside that would have noisy equipment. And I almost think that we need to spend a session honing the definitions of some of these things.
well, we will have to do that. But we do have other requirements for noise and light and what can be outside. We have ordinances that cover all that. If we need to tweak some of the ordinance, but we have requirements for noise.
Well, yeah, I know, but if you permit something and it turns out to be noisy, you don't want to go that route to shut that down or to fix that problem. What I'm saying is what I would like to do, I spent a lot of time on this. Depending on the discussions that I've heard, I'm just wondering if we shouldn't go through all these permitted uses, just kind of see if we need to tweak a few of them so we understand what they are. Like, for example,
I think we are going to do that.
I think we need to do it in the front end of it.
What we're trying to do is get through, these seven are the ones that had the most heartburn.
Yeah.
So most of the others were either, where it was 100% we all agreed on, or maybe 5-1, for agreement with, like, for permitted use or to get rid of it. But these seven were the ones that had a lot of,
All over the place.
Yeah. So, but the thing I'm trying to bring to the attention of everybody is it's already allowed in B20. It's an allowed
But-
use.
The only thing I could say is, I mean, it's certainly possible that the UDO is wrong. It could be that someone codified that incorrectly, and I'm happy to research that and look into that for you to get clear on it. But based on what it says in there, it says it's a special use permit currently. So I would think, given that concern, probably the best course would be to leave it as a special use permit for now. We'll do the research on that previous ordinance and find out exactly what that did or did not do and bring that back to you at a later date.
Well, that brings up the next issue, go-kart tracks, and I know very well they are an allowed use in B20.
But I think the hang up with the special use is whether, if we make it permitted, then do we write out a bunch of ordinances about like how we want that to look if there's another one, I think is the point, right?
Well, it's doubtful there would be.
No, I know.
However, it's permitted now. And if the UDO says it's not, it's wrong.
oh, no, Paxton, I want you to understand that a lot of these were permitted.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Prior to the new UDO. And then someone went through and changed a lot of Ps to SUP. So when you say, I know it was permitted, it was before the changes.
Oh, my Lord.
And that's why I've made such a stink that we need to go back. Where did all this come from?
I'm with
So-
Mike.
I know where it came
I'm with Mike. After the 7, we need to go right down the
So
list.
Frank, remind me what yellow is?
Special use. Keep it
The
special.
yellow, that was simply my recommendation, really just to be helpful to you all. The
Okay.
group of the 6 of you, 2 of you said it should be permitted and 4 of you said you thought it should stay a special use.
Are we on furniture manufacturing?
No, we're on go-karts. Furniture manufacturers, we're not going to make any changes until he researches.
No change.
on go-kart tracks. Do we want to keep that special use? If so, it's
I
yellow.
think there's a lot to a go-kart track because there's a heck of a lot of noise on a go-kart. So the noise issue
I'm like,
has to be addressed, you know. So I think I'm going to agree that it stays SUP. Anybody else disagree with me?
Yeah, I supported this special use, almost have to, but noise being the issue.
Unless it's electric. And that's-
Those aren't
That-
fast.
that the
Actually,
future
you don't
should
want
not be
electric.
We've looked into it,
Really?
That would be awesome.
indoor.
So 4 people voted to keep it special use.
Oh, and that's fine.
And I would say that that's what we stay with. Next is public use utility stations. How could we not have them in all zones?
Exactly.
I don't even know how we could change that.
I don't, that's crazy
You
to
would
change it.
completely undermine development.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we didn't let it.
Yeah.
That would be like saying no schools. You know, why would you'd be shooting yourself in the foot. It's not realistic.
so those are all permitted?
I think they should be.
I think it should be, yes, absolutely, it should be permitted. And here it's 4 permitted, 2 special use.
Right.
But I just don't know why would we ever want to prevent a public utility substation?
It's just ignorant. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be some government agency that says this is where it's got to go anyway. If it substation or, we got one substation over there and God knows, Western Carteret might put us a water tower up someday.
Doubt it, but maybe. All right,
So-
last one.
So that was,
So
that
wait,
was
no,
4 permitted. Do we all agree that we're going to go with the 4?
Yes, ma'am.
Majority
The
of-
majority.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, so of those 7, the only one we have an issue with is furniture
Oh,
manufacturing.
wait, we're not finished. Retirement homes. Next page.
Yeah, there's one more.
I'm sorry.
We've done 6. Next page.
Okay, so
What is a retirement home?
well, you can have there are small retirement homes. I have an 88-year-old mother living with me. I've become an expert on these things now. So there are very, very small retirement homes, like 4 and 5 bedroom homes that have turned into retirement homes. It's not like there are all these giant places.
Is the cottages in Swansboro.
Well, no, I'm talking individual homes.
Yes, the
Yeah.
cottages in
Yeah.
Swansboro.
But that's a whole facility,
Right.
right? I'm talking like here in town, where an individual home could, a single family home could run a business as a retirement home.
Ah,
Would that be like assisted living, a retirement home?
I'm sorry?
An assisted living place, would that be like a retirement home?
It's usually it's usually a little, they're smaller because it requires a little higher care. And that's why they.
Yeah, I think our interpretation of a retirement home based on the town's table is that it would be something maybe more akin to an assisted living type facility, something like that that's got a commercial element to it, where there are people taking care of the retirees in some form. I think that's the interpretation we would make for that, just looking at this right now. With that interpretation in mind, they are currently allowed as a special use in 2 of our residential districts, and 5 of you said that should remain the case, and that probably makes sense in a residential district. In the B20 district, that's a little bit different. If it's more of a commercial enterprise, B20 is obviously a commercial zoning district. Maybe it makes more sense to allow them there. Maybe it makes sense to not allow them at all because it's really more residential in nature and maybe you don't want that in your commercial retail district. So 4 of you said to keep it as a special use in the R20 district. 2 of you said to delete it altogether. But I think
B20, Mike.
B20, yes, B20. And I apologize if I misspoke, but so I think, but I would just tell you, if that application came in tomorrow to town hall, we would be thinking that applies to something like an assisted living type retirement center, or something where there's employees helping the people. That would be my interpretation of that.
Yeah. So, but then I absolutely would not want to see that in any of the residential districts, because what comes along with that is large parking lots, and that kind of thing. So I would not want to see that here. You have it remaining the same as an SUP in R10M and in R10.
Yeah, you
That's
cut us
correct.
off.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about that because 5 of the members said that should stay a special use as it is currently. The discussion where there was some disagreement was in the B20 zone. 4 of you said keep it as special. 2 of you said delete it altogether. And so I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other about this. I'm just simply trying to give you some context for it so that you can make a judgment on it.
If we're talking about a commercial venture, I do not want to see that in R10 or in R10M. So I would vote to remove it from, remove that from any of the residential.
So you delete it there
I would delete it from R10.
in R10?
I don't even understand why it's okay in R10 and it's not okay
Yeah.
The other
B20.
in
B20.
well, in any of the, what's the difference between R10 and
20 and 30.
and 20 and R20 and R30 for the retirements? It doesn't make sense to me. But I would just get them out of the residential district completely if we're talking about a commercial venture like that. When you're having employees, there's going to be a big parking lot and people in and out and shift changes and big deliveries from Cisco trucks.
Cleaning people coming in to clean all of the places.
So we don't want retirement homes at all.
No, well, I want retirement homes. I would be fine
Where?
in B20. I'm not allowed to say B30, but I absolutely would say no in any of the residential, but I would say yes in B20.
So although 5 of us said special use in R10 and R10M,
I'm disagreeing with that.
I think it goes back to what Frank said. It just really depends on what style it would be.
That's right.
So I think it should be special use in all of them because you don't know what it would look like.
When I did this one, I had a special use in R10M, and now that I think about it, I agree with you based on the discussion we've had, because my definition of what a retirement home I've written over here is that assisted living. Why big? When I look at it, assisted living, it might be 20 or 30 units, and I could see that in a commercial unit because it is sort of a commercial thing because you're having people come in and helping these people.
Right.
So,
Well, you don't want to delete it altogether. So if you don't want it in residential, i.e. R10 and R10M, surely you've got to consider it.
In B20, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's where it belongs.
but that's what this discussion changed my mind on that thing. That's what this was not easy.
no.
No, I'm not. I'm a hardhead. That's Susan and that's my wife.
So what are you saying now? leave it as a special use in B20?
I'm saying leave it as a special use in B20. I would even be fine with it being permitted in B20. So,
So deleted in B10 and 10M, R10, R10M, but permitted in B20.
yes.
Permit it in B20. And delete.
Frank, can you tell me why you recommended deleting it completely in B20? What was your
My
thing?
thing, yeah, my thinking was that it's really more akin to a residential type use, and that you probably wouldn't want the retirement home next to Lowe's, for example. That was the thought process behind it. Obviously, there's reasonable opinions on all sides of it, but that's what I was thinking, that it's definitely more intense of a residential environment than a typical neighborhood, whether it's townhouses or single family homes. So I think it's probably appropriate to keep it as a special use permit in those residential zoning districts. My thinking was you probably just wouldn't want that in a commercial retail area of the town. Honestly, I was thinking more in,
So I'm thinking like the lot in front of the gym on 24. Like that would be a small one.
It's not, yeah, it's not big enough.
Where else do we have? Yeah.
and that may be completely appropriate. I mean, the one thing, the two things I should have said to you at the beginning. One is that you're going to get another crack at this. I mean, I'm going to take the feedback from you all over the course of these discussions, and I'll put it into an official ordinance for you to review and consider at a later meeting. So you'll be able to have further discussion and make some adjustments. And so this is the beginning of the discussion, not the end. And second, in many cases, there's no right or wrong answer. There's nothing wrong with the way that you're thinking about that question, and there's nothing wrong with the way I'm thinking about that question. It really comes down to what the group dynamic believes is best for our community. I think it might be completely fine to have a retirement home on the parcel on 24 right in front of the aquatic center. I'm just simply sharing with you what my rationale was when I came up with my own individual conclusion. And you're right, it's hard enough to do this by yourself because it gets very complicated. When you try to do it with 6 people, it's really hard. So
Madam Chair.
So
Yeah.
where are we with retirement homes in this conversation?
I think we said permit in B20 and delete in R10 and R10M.
Does that give you heartburn?
no, I think that's completely fine. And that's what I recorded in my notes.
Right.
Right. Madam Chair,
Yeah.
if I may bring up again a vision that I would love to see a nice retirement home, and I've seen some nice ones. My in-laws down in Florida, 3 levels of care, all the way to the dementia ward. And it could be a fabulous asset to the community behind the clinic, which wouldn't even be seen by anybody. And it wouldn't take a brick wall like the one that's going up on Bayshore Drive, which is a very impressive brick wall, by the way, because it's so heavily wooded, you couldn't even see it. But
Brick wall won't keep out the water. That's in the floodplain, isn't it?
no, sir. It's up next to the highway, near the highway on Bayshore
I'm not
Drive.
sure which one.
But anyway, I just want to bring that to everybody's attention again, and that's presently zoned R30. But I don't know. It would be difficult at best to go for a B20 rezoning in that area. But if we don't allow a retirement home in a residential community, then we won't get one maybe. But just an idea.
Yeah, the other thing I would say too is that I expect that at some point we're going to have a more in-depth discussion about the whole notion of retirement homes, assisted living, transitional type environments, just because it seemed that was a pretty common theme in the land use plan process. So I would expect to work with you all in the future to figure out, okay, where do we think those kinds of facilities make sense in the community? What kind of requirements should we have for them or not? So it seems like there's a lot of interest in that in the community, but you all were more involved than I was.
Okay, so on our list of 7, Frank, did you get the notes for all of that, what we decided?
Yeah, I'll just read through it real quick. So community centers, delete in R10M, farmers and produce, delete in B10, funeral homes permitted in B10, furniture manufacturing, no changes from what's currently indicated on the table, and we'll do some research on that. Go-kart tracks, special use permit in B20, public utility substations permitted in all districts, and then retirement homes, delete from R10 and R10M, make permitted in B20.
Okay, that's my notes too. All right.
Okay, does anybody have anything else that they want to?
Do we want to run through the other
Yeah, that's
pages?
fine.
No, I mean these pages. The recommendations.
Yeah, so what I would say is, if there was either 6 people or 5 people agreed on everything else, again, not considering B30, but in every other situation, there was either 6 people in agreement or 5 people in agreement. If there are individual uses in individual zones that you all think we should talk about, by all means, let's have that discussion. If you don't talk about it, I will assume that you're comfortable with the supermajority. And when I draft the ordinance amendment, I will draw it up that way. And again, you all will have another chance to discuss it.
Okay, Paxton, you're saying you want to go through each of these? Okay, go ahead.
Very quickly.
Okay.
What page?
So Paxton wants to, if you go to the, I think it's the 3rd page
R10,
of the package.
R10 at the top?
Yeah, yeah. R10 intended for single family residential. These are things that are allowed. And I have no problem with any of those.
They would all become permitted uses.
Yes, sir. And that's what the majority said on the questionnaires, right? Yes,
Either 5 or 6.
yes, sir.
Does anyone have any significant objection to making those permitted uses in the R10 district?
I don't.
No,
I'm just trying to go back and forth between the table and what's on this.
and if you'd help us once more with this recreation public definition, because it's in all these zones.
So
Yeah.
recreation public other than commercial, you basically mean town parks.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, I think, for example, it's almost always going to be some sort of town or county or public park type environment. I suppose if there was a nonprofit group that operated something similar, we'd look at it the same way, but that's essentially what it is.
Why is, it doesn't really make sense to me. Why is satellite parking for church and government use okay in some residential but not others? What's the thought there?
Well, it exists in R20 now,
Yes, it's in R20.
Yeah.
Um,
but it exists there now.
There's actually a relatively long provision in the UDO about that. I suspect it was probably written years ago to accommodate a very specific situation. Is the only thing I can think of. I don't know the history, but
It was for the
it's
Baptist church.
Baptist Church
Yeah,
parking lot.
behind First Citizens, the Baptist church. Yeah,
It was in fact called a satellite
exactly.
parking lot.
Yeah, it just seems like if you allow churches in R30, why don't you allow, why wouldn't you allow satellite parking in R30 if you allow it in R20 and R13. That's my point. Why would it not be, if it's an R13 and R20?
I think that's a very reasonable question. I think it probably wound up just being written that way because of that particular situation is my theory.
Yeah, well, I think we should add it. If we allow churches in R30, I think we should allow satellite parking as well.
That got that way because that was an addition about 12,
Yeah.
14 years ago.
Well, let's fix it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Satellite parking for church and government. Do we
So
want to
you're-
add in government? No.
Your
Okay.
recommendation is to make that permitted in all the residential districts, right?
Yeah, so it's consistent in all of the residential.
Understood. Okay.
Would that include R13, R10M?
It's in there now.
All
Oh, it's in R13 now.
Oh, yes, excuse me.
Yeah.
R10M and R10.
Yeah, I think any place there's a church, I think we should let there be satellite parking someplace too for it.
Okay,
Especially,
okay.
I don't know though.
Right.
I think maybe it has to do with elevation. You think about it, those two churches are close to the triangle, which is our highest elevation, which would be in the R20. And if we allowed it in the R30, that would be the lower elevation. And I don't know that we'd want a parking lot, right?
But they require a 5-acre minimum, do they not? To even
For a church,
establish a new church. So,
It could only be one lot that you could do it on. In R30, 2.
well, now, in R30, if there was a church in R30, let's say that they built a church at the corner of Pine Lake and Star Hill. Instead of building townhouse or anything else, let's say they built a church there and purchased the lot, an existing lot across the street for satellite parking. Isn't that the theory behind it? Right?
Yeah, honestly, I don't see any problem with satellite
Yeah.
parking really for any permitted use, to be honest with you, but that's the way our ordinance is written.
Okay. So that's something I would like to see all of the residential uses to be consistent. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't.
I don't know. I never looked at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
We might.
I mean, I don't think they're going to put a golf course in Bay Shore, but if they wanted to, like, why couldn't they? Like that's our B20 district right now.
Oh, Bay Shore's B15.
Oh, B15. Wait, where's our?
R, I mean R.
R.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so a golf course would be allowed in all the residential districts.
I think that should have been we don't have R10, we have R15.
Yeah, we have R10. Bay Shore is R10.
That's what I said. Somebody said, no, it was R15.
It's R10.
What was R15?
I said, they're 15,000 square feet and
okay.
and most everybody in the world would call that R15.
I know. That was the
So-
point I made with
Okay.
R20.
And then for B10, now B10 here, we have community centers, and we just got done saying here a minute ago.
Yeah, but these are these are,
These are uses for that zoning
right,
district.
right, right, but these are not for like a little subdivision like Cape Point. These would be for profit, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but isn't that what we just said no to?
Oh dear, let's see.
When we were going over that list?
The seven.
So
Yeah, we said delete
you
in
also-
R10M.
Oh, deleted an R10M. You're right. I'm sorry.
So this would make it a permitted use in B10.
Right. So, B10 looks good.
And we're still allowing rental service stores like Country Air in B10. That's,
No, didn't we?
what did we do for that? That was my question, my first question.
Yeah.
So theoretically, the rental service stores would be a permitted use in B10 and B20. They would become that.
Okay. All right, that's
So,
what we
yeah,
said.
would we want a Country Air in B10? How many B10s do we have left? It's just this one, right? Isn't this our only B10 lot left?
No, we have that 3 acres at Taylor and Ocean and 24. And we have,
That's B10.
It almost looks like that rental services should be in B20 and not B10.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree with that. That's why I asked the question, what is a rental service?
Oh, now you know.
Country Air, that's what it is. Okay, so maybe not for B10.
Yeah, so Frank, can we go back to the rental service stores and take that out of B10?
We sure can.
It's not in B10.
So that
Now
would, with the rental service stores in B10, do you want to delete it altogether or do you want to keep it as a special use permit?
I would delete it altogether.
Yeah, it's not in the chart here, but it's on the thing. I think it's a typo. It probably should be down under B20.
Well, we all agreed that it should be permitted on our questionnaires.
Yeah.
All 6 of us.
I think I was not thinking in terms of like equipment, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
But it's not in B10 on this. It is here.
It is here.
It is.
It
It's
is
on
here.
both of them.
It is here. It's green.
It
And
was
6
unanimous.
of us, yeah, 6 of us said permitted.
Okay, mine are cut off.
I was
Okay.
thinking of like real estate rental.
Law offices.
Well, that's what should, like, law officers, real estate offices, engineering offices, that's what should be in B10,
Well, that,
right? Professional service.
absolutely. And that's why I think it's right in front of us. I think it should not be in B10, but in
Yeah.
B20.
Yeah.
That's an oversight.
So we're going to take that we're going to take it off the table of permitted use for B10, and we're going to take it off this list for B10.
Correct.
Got it.
When we get to B20, we'll put it there.
I think it is there.
Yeah, B20, you all indicated to make it a permitted use.
Okay. So are we in B20 now?
We're in B20 now.
Okay. See what's at the top of the list.
Alcoholic beverage stores?
One of the first things built in this town.
Oh, really?
Probably the biggest one in eastern North Carolina, too.
No,
I bet it is. Where's a bigger one?
Emerald Isle.
That ain't bigger than this one.
It's big. But the original one wasn't that big.
No, it was a little bitty thing.
Now, clubs, lodges, civic and fraternal, that kind of goes with the private recreation, right? And okay, and we did it for B20, we changed that. What was the driver for limiting dry cleaning pickup for 1,000 square feet?
What Camp Lejeune is facing right now.
What would you say, Paxton?
What Camp Lejeune is facing right now. They didn't
Well,
want
this
the
is-
Actual
chemicals.
chemicals
That's
to be
right.
used. on
Right.
occasion.
Well, this is just pick up and drop off.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's what we used to have here.
Always pick up and drop off
Right.
only. Yep. Because we didn't want chemicals.
And laundry. So we don't have a laundry. So this would allow a laundromat in B20 as well.
We did have a laundromat in the Ribeyes building.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Farmers and produce, we said. So farmers and produce, we said only B20, and that's what's on those. Fire station, food. Food stores excluding the dressing of fowl. On this one, it looks like funeral homes are here. Did we say funeral homes only in B20? We go back to that list.
Let me ask, on the
Okay.
food stores excluding the killing and dressing of fowl or flesh, I guess the killing, that would make it a slaughterhouse,
right,
okay? But
right.
all of these stores that have a meat market or a fish
Sure.
market dress
Sure.
fish and
Sure.
and meat.
But they don't kill it.
No, okay. So that's the key word in that one.
For funeral homes, we allowed,
I thought we allowed it in B10. I lost my paper.
we
somewhere.
permitted it in B10. We permitted it on our list in B10.
Okay, so it's not,
On the list of 7.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
but-
you all,
but it's not on this list that we're doing now.
Do we
So we
want?
want to add that.
Okay.
I had that where don't need it in B10 since there's so little of that that would fit better in B20, be allowed as a permitted use.
Well, let's see what we said.
You know,
there was some disagreement about funeral homes in B10, and when you all discussed that, you all said you thought it should be a permitted use.
Yeah.
And when you did the worksheet, there was general agreement that funeral homes should be a permitted use in B20. So theoretically, they'd be permitted in B10 and B20.
Right.
Okay, so we need to add it to this list that we're doing now for
yeah. But
B10
why-
intended.
Why would, with
It isn't.
It is in B20.
B10?
No, B10. It's not on the B10.
Why would we put it in B10? Funeral homes have to have huge parking lots, okay?
They don't have to be huge.
A lot of people go to funerals. And that's the only time it's
So,
used.
but if you,
We don't have much B10 space per
But, yeah.
person.
you have to understand that not every funeral home is huge. Some funeral homes are small, and that's how people choose what they're going to do. I just don't see why would we prevent it? If a small funeral home was coming into town, I don't see why we would prevent it.
I think that there's so much more B20 than B10. That goes back to when we talk B30, reserve something.
Not enough to
I
talk
know,
about
I know
B30.
we're not allowed to.
Nah.
That's the only way I can make my point.
The district which shall not be named.
Well, I'm not gonna, just don't know why it would be in there, but it is, okay?
Why is mail order catalog in B20 but not B10? Because that's just a place you just walk in the front door, right? Who does mail order catalogs
Nobody.
anymore?
It should be just deleted.
It's
Delete.
it's almost gone.
Yeah,
Delete.
finger hug. But you know, like, why wouldn't we have that in B10, which is, you know, kind of like light, retail light?
I think you would.
Well, probably the reason you wouldn't is because those catalog stores, at least the old ones, used to have a lot of deliveries of big trucks, okay? Bringing stuff in that had been ordered in the catalog.
Thing of the past.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, and you've got to recognize that many of the provisions in the UDO literally go back 30, 40, 50
Right.
years. So
So it's probably not even worth adding that to B10.
honestly, I don't think it would matter either, whatever you decide.
Massage establishment and therapist.
And you know, they did allow tattooing as a special zoning addition. Now, I don't know if it's in the UDO, but it was for eyebrows and things of that
Oh,
nature.
like for the, yeah, they may even do that at the spa.
Maybe, but it was allowed. I don't know if it is now. I've never tried it.
So massage establishment and therapist. In B20, we currently have one in town in B20. Would we ever want to put that into B10, like in a small little strip mall? No, strip mall would be B20.
I don't think it would hurt to add it.
No, it's a very popular item. And they're in Cedar Point, Vogue, and Cape Carteret.
Yeah, a lot of them are small. They only
Yeah.
have, you know, like 1 or 2 clients at a time. Media offices and studios, including newspaper. Somebody help me understand what would a media office be? Like the place where the salty sheep, that would be a media office?
What?
Where the Tideland.
Tideland News and
Tideland
churchy
newspaper.
looking building.
Yeah, I don't think we'd want that anywhere but B20. Medical facilities and services. Now, if you had, like, let's say, like a psychotherapist, why would you not want them in B10?
Well, that could be a in-home professional use, couldn't it? Do we
Yeah,
have that bit?
I mean, I think these are all really good questions, but I think you have to keep in mind that the exercise was to look at the special uses and decide
Right.
whether they should become permitted or special.
Right,
So
right.
that was the main focus of the exercise. All this other stuff, very reasonable argument.
Yeah.
It's just going to take you longer to get, because you could probably have that same conversation about a lot of things in here.
Right.
What does this asterisk mean?
It's like a P with considerations.
And would that be special use?
No, it's permitted by right with additional considerations. Anything with signs, anything with noise, all has stuff like that. Lights has that.
So the question I asked Madam Chairman is, 2 of these things, home child daycare and home occupations are listed as permitted, home occupations are listed as a permitted use on our worksheet with an asterisk. And Susan said that there are other conditions along with the permitted use. And the home child daycare is allowed in R15, R20, and R30. I was just curious about those additional conditions. Where would we find
In the
those?
ordinance?
Okay.
Actually, it becomes very subjective, is what happens when they're applying for it. So,
Well, there are other provisions in the ordinance that talk about, home occupations. For example, you can't have customers coming to and fro the house and those kinds of things. So they're spelled out in the UDO in different locations.
so we are at it's 8:20. Frank, have we sufficiently covered what you need us to do at this step for the table of permitted uses scrub?
Yeah, quite honestly, you made more progress than I expected you would. And again, admittedly, it's a difficult conversation to have, just the nature of the way it's constructed. So this has been very helpful. I think we didn't talk about the list of special uses that either 5 or 6 of you believed should stay special uses. But I think unless you all have strong objections, what I will do is I will draft an ordinance amendment that reflects the 5 or 6 supermajority, and then with the changes that we talked about as a group here tonight, and probably structure it that way for your next discussion. And you certainly can make whatever adjustments, think about things in the meantime, and we'll make a little more progress then. But to be honest with you, you've been more productive and more efficient than I would have guessed. So congrats.
Well, that's a backhanded
Yeah.
compliment, but we'll take it.
No, I don't mean that bad in any way.
It wouldn't take
It's
as
hard
long.
enough to think about by one person, let alone 6 or 5.
Okay, folks. So I think we're where we need to be for the table of permitted uses. Let's get this updated, and we'll look at it again. The last thing, next planning board meeting is October 18th. Anybody have any problems with that? I will tell you that we are probably going to lose Neil for the next month and a half. So it is very important that with Neil gone, that the rest of us be able to make it. If you can't make it, then let's make an adjustment in the day, so that we have a quorum. The other issue is that Frank mentioned today that he doesn't think that we can have a meeting now that COVID is over. We cannot have a meeting without the planning board members here. So you can't, we won't be able to dial in like we were able to. So over the.
What do you mean? Say that? I didn't quite understand.
So you know how during COVID, people were able to dial in?
Oh, okay.
So that's not an option anymore. So that.
What about him?
Right. Well, he is
Yeah, so-
COVID right now.
No, it's a great question. So it pertains to the actual decision makers only. They have to be physically present. So we'll still continue to broadcast these for the public. We'll still continue if there's a need for someone to brief you remotely. That happened obviously before COVID, sometimes with consultants and things like that. It's just the decision-making people have to be physically present. You can't allow them to participate remotely anymore. And it's just the way the law is written. I actually did verify that with the town attorney also, Susan. So that was his also.
So as we go forward, if, it's important if you cannot make a meeting to let us know. And if we have to make adjustments, to meet our quorum, then we'll do that. Okay? Frank, you have any comments?
Just a couple real quick. One is that I will soon, with the Board of Commissioners' blessing, I will soon be recruiting for a new position with the town that would bring building inspections back in-house and also provide additional customer service for development applications, additional support, helping me with the planning board and the Board of Adjustment and the zoning permits. And I'll start advertising for that position probably sometime in October and see what kind of interest we get in that position. I think it would be helpful to the town. I am concerned that we may not be able to attract the right kind of person just because it's very difficult to attract building inspectors nowadays. But it's worth a try, and I think would be a great help to the town if we can make that happen. So we'll see where it goes. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. The only other thing I wanted to mention to you all is that I got a draft of the report prepared by CPNI, where they came in June and they met with, I think, several of you in the room and other folks. And I've reviewed a draft of their report. I should have the final version of that report for you, certainly by your next meeting, if not sooner, and I'll distribute that at that time. So if you have questions about those things or anything else, I'm happy to answer them.
You know, when you mentioned that building inspector, you're also doing code enforcement. Well,
Correct, yeah. It would essentially be a all things development related, whether it's zoning, whether it's ordinances, whether it's planning board, whether it's board of adjustment, whether it's code enforcement, whether it's building inspections, essentially the whole package.
okay.
Okay, Frank, that's it?
That's it, yes.
Frank, thanks for the work that you did getting all of this ready for us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And for keeping us on track. Planning board members, anybody got any safe rounds? Chrisman, okay. Yeah, that's. Okay, folks, thank you very much. I know there was a lot to do with this, and I think it went well. I'm pleased. And so at this point, Frank, this is going, the changes to the UDO is going to the board on the 10th.
Yeah, the final adoption of the land use plan and the R10M amendments will both be on the Board of Commissioners agenda on October the 10th. Yes.
Okay, and let me ask this, are you gonna brief that? Because, you know, there's no reason, that's what we did today. There's no reason for both of us to brief the same things. So, but I guess we can coordinate that offline.
Yeah, I mean, I generally, my approach is on every item, I give a brief introduction of the item for the Board of Commissioners and certainly welcome any additional comments that you might want to make.
Okay. Okay, motion. Go ahead.
I was just saying,
Are you
motion
making
to
a
adjourn.
motion? Okay, Sarah made a motion to adjourn. Okay, everybody in favor? Good night, folks. Thank you very much. Folks, thank you for sticking around.
Thank you all.
It wasn't interesting, was it?